Another Wednesday's come and gone, and I've got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week we've seen demonic assaults, the consequences of time travel, and super heroic construction equipment. But we're going to kick things off this week with Absolute Batman number 2, written by Scott Snyder with artwork by Nick Dragotta. This honestly did way more for me than issue 1 even did, as it built out the world a little bit more than the first issue really could. We start to get to spend some more time with the ancillary characters. We get a better understanding of Bruce and Batman himself. And most importantly, we get a viewpoint of Alfred as he kind of is watching over Batman, and he starts understanding basically his tactics, his motives, and what he's doing. I love how they took the time to spend some time with Martha, Bruce's mother, who is still alive in this universe, as Jim, as we find out that they've kind of kindled a relationship after Thomas's passing, and, in Jim actually saving a young Bruce at the shooting that occurred at the zoo. It's really starting to flesh out this world. It's starting to feel something wholly new and different all to itself. And honestly, it feels a little bit kind of like Batman Beyond the cartoon when it came out back in the day, where we played with all the ideas of Batman, but everything was skewed and everything was just different in a really fun, interesting way. That's what this feels like to me. So, Absolute Batman number 2, again, way better than I thought the first issue was. Next up, let's talk Action Comics 1075, written by Mark Waid with artwork by Clayton Henry. It's clear to me that Mark Waid is leaning into the fun of Action Comics, as week over week now, we've seen heavy, weighty things, but they haven't really felt that way. They haven't been a burden on the story because it's really felt more like a fun action adventure type of storyline. This week, we've seen Kal-El has kind of escaped the Phantom Zone, but in doing so, he has found himself in the past on Krypton with his parents. Last week, I kind of said it felt like a Back to the Future homage, and it still feels very much that same way as Clark is getting to see some of the events that he's been told by his parents through the Fortress of Solitude, but he's kind of seeing them through a different lens and seeing them in a different light, as the things he was told doesn't necessarily line up with the things that actually happened in real life. It's giving a new light to how he sees his parents and how he sees the decisions that were made and how ultimately the destruction of Krypton actually occurred. So I'm having a lot of fun with this. It's not anything that is going to be extraordinarily consequential, but that's okay because, again, it seems like Mark Waid is leaning into the fun of this story. And if that's the case, I'll take that roller coaster ride. And with our next issue, let's talk Amazing Spider-Man 61, written by Joe Kelly with artwork by Ed McGuinness. So the Zeb Wells run has officially ended, and now is going to be the perfect time for Spider-Man to get back to basics and get street level and finally have a really good jumping on. I'm sorry, what's that? Oh, this is basically a tie-in? Oh, and it's bogged down by previous things from other events like Infinity Watch? Oh, and he's given a brand new suit by Doctor Doom? Okay, so maybe this isn't the best jumping on point. However, I will say that when I read this, I did have some fun with it. I feel like Joe Kelly was able to get a good grasp on the voice of Peter Parker and Spider Man, and Ed McGuinness renders a really fun and exciting version of Spider Man. Is it going to be the thing that changes your mind about Spider Man and the Amazing Spider Man title if you had struggles with the Nick Spencer run and the Zeb Wells run? No, probably not. Is it the best jumping on point? No, probably not. But if you're along for the ride for a Spider-Man story and you're not gonna need to feel like it's gonna be something wholly new, then stick around for the ride. It's definitely not disappointing necessarily. It's just not the fresh and bold thing that they could have done with a relaunch of Amazing Spider-Man, given that it's a new creative team. Maybe they're holding that off for another, I don't know, another team. Maybe this is just a mini arc that Joe Kelly's going to be doing. Regardless, it was fun, but it didn't feel any different than some of the things that we've gotten in the last couple years here. So overall, it was okay. All right, let's talk The Domain number 5, written by Chip Zdarsky with artwork by Rachel Stott. So this is the finale of what we've gotten here with the domain, which is the comic from within a comic of public domain. And I gotta say, like, my feelings throughout each and every issue of this series has been resoundingly the same, which is that it works great as an extra part of public domain, but it doesn't necessarily stand on its own as a comic book itself. It can, but it's a little bit shaky, basically. So this is the finale. We've gotten to spend time with our three characters who have gained the powers, similar to like a Green Lantern type story, where there's a bracelet that they can wear that will allow them superheroic powers. Granted, they have to share those powers, and then one is using it, the power shifts from one person to the next. So this has been kind of fun. I've been along for the ride here, and as an introduction to these new characters, if it was its own comic book with no exterior connections to anything, then it would have been okay. And I think that it did an effective job at telling us what these characters were all about and where their journeys were going to go. And in fact, I think the ending of this was the perfect setup for a comic book to really expand on the ideas and like kind of expand on the scope of where these characters were going to go. Ultimately, though, again, this is, it's telling the story of the comic that is being developed within another comic here. So it's a fun book. It's not a wholly necessary book, but I got to tell you, the notion of maybe seeing these characters in a flash forward later on and knowing what could happen in the pages of public domain itself is kind of a cool and exciting idea. I love to see how the influence of the creators within the comic book could influence the comic book that is being made. So the domain has finally wrapped up here. It was all right. It was pretty decent, but again, I think there's something left there to explore in future arcs. And with a new premiere issue, let's talk G.I. Joe #1, written by Joshua Williamson with artwork by Tom Riley. I was really excited over this as we've gotten to play within the Energon universe in a multitude of new premiere issues at this point, and we've gotten to spend time with both the Transformers and G.I. Joes, and this was going to be the culmination. This was going to be the kickoff of the G.I. Joe proper team within this new universe. And overall, I gotta say, I was kind of let down by it. I think my expectations were pretty darn high for this and maybe just didn't meet those because by no means was it a bad issue. It just felt kind of middle of the road. We've gotten the Duke series, we've gotten Cobra, Destro, Scarlet, and we've gotten to see a lot of these characters. And I feel like as opposed to the sum of the parts being greater, this felt lesser, really. The building out of the team kind of, I don't know, just didn't hit with me, didn't resonate with me the same way that I've gotten with these individual characters in their individual miniseries as they came out. It was fun, and I think that the strength of this book really falls on the shoulders of Tom Riley and Jordi Belair, as Tom Riley's artwork is fun, it's energetic, it's kinetic, it keeps everything flowing and moving, and Jordi Belair is using some of the same stylistic choices that she's developed in the pages of Birds of Prey, where it's almost like this offset printing coloring approach, which evokes like an old school comic feel, granted in a modern, page weight. So overall, G.I. Joe kind of felt middle of the road for me, but there's a lot left to be told within the pages of this book, as some of these characters haven't even come into the fold yet. So it's one of those things where time will tell. Next up, let's talk Minor Arcana #3, written and drawn by Jeff Lemire. So Jeff Lemire has a little bit of a reputation of writing sad dad stories. And what's the best way to buck that trend? Write a sad girlfriend story, right? All right, with all jokes being put aside here, this is a really great slice of life book. And when I say slice of life, it really is. It falls under that kind of all of the notions that you think of with a slice of life book. But it's kind of cool because it's marrying these supernatural, I don't know, instincts and supernatural things that are going on in a way that feels very natural. Nothing feels jarring or out of place. It feels like both of these worlds are married together in a very nice way. On top of that, the one of the strengths of Jeff Lemire is that he writes very natural sounding dialogue. So as you're reading this, you feel like you're reading the stories of real characters in real life with real things happening. The the story in this particular issue really revolves around some of the backstory of our main characters. We get to see more of the time that she spent in the past, specifically with some relationships that she's had and how those relationships crumbled apart, and how she's basically kind of, the construct of her own demise, basically. She's pushing people aside and keeping people at arm's length, just because it's kind of in the nature of her own being, and being that she's come back home now, she's struggling with those same things. Take that and put it on top of the fact that she's struggling with the fact that maybe she now has supernatural powers where she can, you know, talk to the dead. Well, that's going to make for a compelling story. So overall, Minor Arcana is building with each and every issue, and it's delivering just enough to kind of keep its hooks in me. But I'm more curious, man. If you read it, what were your thoughts? All right, let's talk Psylocke #1, written by Alyssa Wong with artwork by Vincenzo Caratu. I was pleasantly surprised by this issue, as I didn't really put a lot of weight behind it, knowing that a lot of new #1s, especially with secondary characters, maybe you'll get 6 issues and then it kind of gets pushed to the wayside. But this was a lot of fun. Alyssa Wong is crafting a story that is very energetic and very action packed as we hit the ground running with Quanon already on a mission here to start saving some of the mutants that are being held captive by different factions in the Marvel Universe after the demise of Krakoa. So we get to spend a lot of time with her, and Alyssa Wong is crafting things that are happening both in the present day and the past as well, as we learn more about, the upbringing of Quanon, as, the majority of the comic book reading community really has the most knowledge of her when she was actually bonded in one entity with Betsy Braddock. Well, now she is her own individual. She's retained ownership of her body again, and she is Quanon. So we get to know how Quanon was raised and what things she had to go through and how that's impacting her as an adult, and how that's impacting some of the decisions she's making both as a member of Scott's X-Men and some of the individual decisions that she makes as she's going on these missions to help people that are being captured by AIM, trying to harvest a new mutant growth hormone. So again, this is all about basically, the pedal to the metal. This is all about Psylocke on her adventure, on her mission, disregarding the needs of anything else besides her primary goal. And Alyssa Wong is doing a fantastic job with it. I'm having a lot of fun being on this adventure, and seeing every single page turn as you get more action upon more action upon more action. So Psylocke #1 as an introduction was a lot of fun. Next up, let's talk Transformers #14, written by Daniel Warren Johnson with artwork by Jason Howard. So this is Jason Howard's second issue where he has taken on the main artistic duties. And I gotta say, I'm just as pleasantly surprised as I was with the first issue, as he's kind of kept up with that frenetic energy that we've come to know and love from Daniel Warren Johnson, then that Jorge Corona took over when he was on artistic duties. So nothing is dropping off in regards to artwork. When it comes to the story, the last issue was a really heartfelt, resonating story all about the character Starscream, which you wouldn't anticipate, and you get to really live within his backstory and learn the reasons as to why maybe he makes some of the choices that he makes. And it was really heartfelt and emotional. And we get this issue, and it's like, oh, well, I forgot. Yeah, Starscream is still a dick. So we get back to modern day Starscream in this. But we have a lot of fun with that too, because people don't change on a dime either. And what we're starting to build up with these issues more and more is that we're getting almost 3 factions of Autobots, Decepticons, and whatever basically fighting. And we're getting closer and closer to an alliance where the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And when you throw the G.I. Joes on top of that, that's going to add a whole nother level of, I don't know, intrigue to this book. So overall, again, this is all about building. This is all about the structure of these stories here. And we've gotten to spend time with this third faction now that is building and developing. And it's really exciting. So Transformers #14 definitely did it for me. All right, let's talk Ultimate X-Men #9, written and drawn by Peach Momoko. This felt like a disjointed issue, as I feel like a lot was thrown at us and not a lot of explanation was given behind some of the decisions that are being made in this book. This one introduced more characters, and more characters that we actually know within the 616 universe as their, traditional counterparts, basically. However, there's a lot of things that are happening in this that are making me scratch my head over what it means to be a mutant and what it means to have these mutant powers and how these mutant powers are attained. Very interesting things, I guess I'll say. More to be learned from this series here, as we don't get all the answers we need in this issue. One of the things that we do get to learn is that some of the characters that we've seen as villainous in the past here, well, maybe they're shown in a different light, and maybe the things that have been happening here have not been under the villainous terms that we originally thought them to be. There's a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of things that are happening within this issue here that are going to be directly affecting our main characters. Specifically, though, the people that we spent the most time with from issue one, which is going to be Armor and the Shadow King. So overall, again, this was a little bit of a topsy-turvy kind of issue, but it did give a little bit of the answers that we're looking for to keep the pace of this book going. So overall, it was pretty decent. And next up, we have Uncanny X-Men number 5, written by Gail Simone with artwork by David Marquez. This continues to be Rogue's story and Rogue's journey through the pages of this book. And I got to say, I'm just here for it. I'm loving the character development that we get from the character of Anna Marie. As we learn a little bit more about her past, we learn a little bit more about the nature of her leadership, quote unquote, not necessarily being a leader of a team, but just her leadership qualities as she cares for the individuals all around her and what it means to protect those people. Rogue is really devastatingly injured when she's fighting this character, this new villainous character that we're introduced to that has ties to Professor X's past. And it's kind of cool how we see, I don't know, her powers, Rogue's powers, being played with a little bit more so than we have in the past, as she's able to basically pull on powers that have been latent within her for a shortened period of time, and how she can use those. And I don't know, there's a lot of fun ideas that are being played with here, but again, it's more about the character than it is the plot and the narrative at this point, as we're really just building up these characters and building up their motivations and really exploring why it is that they tick within these pages. Gail Simone is doing fantastic here. She's writing great dialogue for these characters. And again, that's what it's all about, the characters. The characters are at the forefront here where the plot is secondary, and I'm okay with that. So, Uncanny X-Men number 5 did everything I expected it to. And with our runner-up pick of the week, let's talk Helen of Windhorn number 6, written by Tom King with artwork by Bilquiz Evely. So this is the ending of what we've now found out to be the first chapter within the pages of Helen of Windhorn. And I gotta say, on any other week, this probably would have been the top comic of the week. But this one had a couple things that were working against it here, but so many more positives to talk about. First and foremost, the marriage of the artwork and the lettering by Clayton Cowles has been fantastic. It's been stunning, and I love the way that they utilize it to display some of the things that happen within these pages, such as Helen being distracted by some of the teachings from her, from the governess character, the one that is actually trying to teach her things in the real world on the times when she's not going off to this fantasy world that she's been going into with her grandfather. The other parts are these, just the narrative itself here. Tom King is writing a really fantastic character-driven journey as we get to see the character of Helen grow, and we get to see, kind of the cracks within the grandfather character, start to develop as he opens up and starts telling her and teaching her more about the ways that she was, brought up and how her father was brought up, and all of the different things and mysteries of this world, and even just, the manor of Windhorn itself. I'm loving what it means to live with these characters and kind of grow and develop and see where they're going to take these things. The only downside I have with this book and this series overall has been that it's felt lopsided in the way that the storytelling mechanism of us staying, hearing the story from the governess and having the story basically recounted by someone that is interested in the story, potentially writing a story about the story itself. It's almost like you don't need that storytelling mechanism at all. You could just tell the story of Helen and have her be the narrator for no other reason than to tell the story, as opposed to these other things. Now maybe we'll get to see that developed further in the next chapters, the next arcs of Helen of Windhorn. Time will tell on that. But as a series so far, the 1 through 6 and this issue in particular, it really did a fantastic job on wrapping things up, putting a bow on this chapter of the story, and giving us just enough to want to come back for more. And with our top comic of the week, let's talk Precious Metal number 6, written by Darcy Van Polgeest with artwork by Ian Bertram. This was brilliance. This was absolute brilliance, but also chaos It was controlled chaos throughout the entirety of this series, but it was just done so masterfully as we've gotten to spend so much time now with our main character Max, otherwise known as Sarge, in the pages of Little Bird, and his journey to both find the child that was being pursued by multiple factions here. One being his mother, kind of within the seedy underbelly of the city, and the other being the kind of like the religious oligarchy of this world. We've also get to spend time with him trying to rectify what he's done with his own child and how he's been an absentee parent, throughout her entire childhood itself. And, kind of developing what's happening with him and how he became to be itself as he is now, kind of found out that he's a construct of the designer within this world, which is why he has the crazy tentacle arms as he's been modded basically from his inception, but also modded in a way that was going to be able to basically bring forth an end to the hierarchy that we have in place within this world. It was a really cool storyline. The last issues in particular were like a really fast-paced, adventurous, arc where we got to really kind of just see Max take the reins of the story and move it forward and really kind of become the heroic character that it's very clear that he wanted to be, but thought so less of himself in the earlier issues of this book that he just couldn't bring himself to do so. So many fantastic journeys that we get to take with these characters here, whether it's the main character or the ancillary players that we basically have within this, like the daughter of the maker. Really fun things that are going on within these pages here. We get to learn so many more things about some of the characters that we see later on within the pages of Little Bird, and they work together so beautifully too. So if you haven't read Little Bird, after you finish this, maybe go and read that. And heck, if you've read it before, even so, go ahead and read it again, because man, it makes it so much more of an enriching experience to know the different things that are happening within this world and how they really truly do connect here. And rumor has it that there might be a third story to be told here, so time will tell on that. What I can say is that this second story within the universe of Little Bird has been absolutely stunning. So that's what I've got for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read and what were your thoughts? Do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe, and be part of the panel. Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.